This is the Wandering Mike.
Welcome, everyone, to the Wandering Mike. Today I'm here with Mari. Hey, Mari, how's it going?
Good, Mike. I am super excited to be here. I am good, enjoying my day, and I can't wait to chat with you.
Wonderful. Same here. I think it's going to be a very interesting and inspiring conversation that we're going to have. Um, so to get us started, if you just want to introduce yourself to the people, tell us a little bit about your life, your journey, anything you want to share.
Wonderful. So, like you said, my name is Mari. Let's see, grew up in the United States in Oregon and then lived in Oregon till I was 18 and then toured with a theater company around the United States for a year before heading off to university in Connecticut, which is on the other side of the United States for people who are unfamiliar with what's on the West Coast and what's on the East Coast. Went to college in Connecticut, got a degree in acting, and then I lived in New York City for a few years, sang with an Irish band, worked as a nanny, worked in restaurants, and then I decided I wanted something different, something else, and was introduced to creative arts therapies and was introduced specifically to dance movement therapy. And that's what brought me to the state of Colorado, which is where I currently live. I moved here in 2007 to go to grad school in somatic counseling, psychology, dance movement therapy at a very small Buddhist inspired university called Naropa in Boulder, Colorado. And once I graduated, I just fell in love with Colorado and decided to stay. And it was shortly after graduating that I started combining my degrees in acting and psychology together to create this sustaining creativity program that I started way back, almost 12 years ago now, which I even just doing that math, I can't even believe that it was that long ago that started. And I started taking that work that I had put together and being a guest artist at universities around the United States and sharing my sustaining creativity work with dance and theater departments. And then the pandemic happened and all of those in person pieces stopped. And so I
Mm.
decided to pivot my creativity world and I turned it into a podcast called the Sustaining Creativity Podcast and started interviewing people from around the world about creativity and what it means to them. And 4.5 years later, almost 5 years later, I'm still doing it. And I love talking to people about creativity and I love sharing the creative work that I do. And creativity is just a way of life for me. And so I'm super excited to share that with your listeners today and whoever decides that they need a little creative boost. So that's a bit about me. And I guess I should also say I'm also a therapist, a mental health dance movement therapist, and I have a private practice here in Colorado. And I love being a therapist. I love helping people and talking to people and using my creativity in therapy as well as in the world of performing. Cause every once in a while I get back on stage and sing and act and dance. So there you go.
Um, so I always find it kind of good to start these things off chronologically. So
Mhm.
if we want to go back a little bit and um, yeah, you were sharing how you went with a theater company and you traveled and you also mentioned singing in an Irish band. So, just very generally, it sounds like from a very young age you were quite creative, and you basically were looking for these kind of things. to do,
Yeah.
and you were heavily involved at a young age, getting a degree for acting. So what sparked all these things in your youth? Like where did the motivation come from?
Yeah. Well, I was a very rowdy, active child, and I was 3 years old when I did my first professional show. So
Mm,
my mom was pregnant with my younger brother, and my parents sent me to essentially circus school. So went to trapeze
right,
school when I was 3 years old to be out of the house. And I fell in love
right.
with trapeze and performing and did performance and trapeze, was a trapeze artist from the time I was 3 until I was 20. And that was where the performing or entertainment bug bit me, so to
Really?
speak. And I've been doing it ever since. And I think my understanding of entertainment and performing has shifted over the years. But at that time in my life, when I was in my childhood years, performing, being on stage was like the best feeling, and it was addictive, and that's all I wanted to do. So that's where it all started.
So yeah, it sounds like, well, 3 years old. You were really um growing up with the performing lifestyle, and you basically because I actually find this always very interesting if people start something, whatever it is, at a very young age. And um I kind of always have the same question, because it then is basically becoming your normal, right? Like that's all you know. That's kind of so I always find that interesting. Was there a moment in your life where you, or when you realized, well, not everyone grows up like that? Was there a moment like that?
Several moments like that when I think there were moments like that in high school when I would talk to friends about, "Oh, yeah, I do this trapeze school," and many people had no idea what that was. Or, "Oh,
Hmm,
yeah, I can't get together this weekend because I'm in performance, or I have shows, or I have," stuff like that. So that though those moments are very real, and because it was my normal, and I think I gravitated towards other people who that was normal for
right.
as well. And so as I got older, even in college, for acting, I was with a lot of people who had done that for most of their young adulthood as well. That theater and performing arts was a huge part of their life in that world. So yeah, there were several moments of being a part of this performing arts community that other people didn't understand. And I oftentimes forgot that, oh, not everyone does 5 shows in a weekend.
Um, and you were also talking about something called dance movement therapy.
Hmm.
So I I think it's probably not foreign to a lot of people that movement can actually be very helpful and very therapeutic.
Mhm.
But I honestly have never heard of dance movement therapy, so I'm just actually curious, what does that actually entail? So what's the w- yeah, what's up with all that?
Great question. I love talking about dance movement therapy. So very excited to. Dance movement therapy is one of the creative arts therapies. There's drama therapy, music therapy, art therapy, dance therapy. Um, and I think that is it. I'm sure I'm forgetting something. There might be something else, but that is kind of the cluster of therapies that go into the creative arts therapies. And so
Right.
each one of those specific modalities has their own code of ethics, has their own history, and dance movement therapy is the same. It has its own code of ethics, it has its own history, but it really is about bridging the gap between the body and the mind and using the body as a tool for change. So to get a little science nerdy on your listeners to break it down a bit, when we are kind of developing in utero, our nervous system and our body develops way before our brain. The brain is kind of the last thing to come online. And so when you are going into therapy and it's just talk therapy, not to say that that is bad, that absolutely is beneficial and very helpful. However, if we forget that we have the rest of our body below our shoulders, it,
Mhm.
there's a lot of information that our body holds on to that can be very helpful in providing change, growth, opportunities for us to live differently in our life if that's what we want to do. So, dance movement therapy really is about including the full body and taking a holistic approach to the therapeutic process. So, there's a lot of paying attention to sensations in your body, paying attention to tension or discomfort or
Nice.
emotions and how they show up in your physical body. So, also paying attention to your breath. Are you breathing only in your chest area? Are you breathing down in your abdomen? Um, so, there's a lot of awareness, a lot of mindfulness that goes into dance movement therapy, but also a lot of movement too. You know, breathing is moving. So, that gives you a little overview of dance movement therapy.
S- So, just to really for myself, to understand as well,
Yeah.
it is called therapy. So, apart from the moving, I reckon, the way you talked about it, so there's a lot of talking about how one feels, as well, though. So you kind of reflect on these things that you mentioned, that how the body feels and how we feel uneasy. So that is definitely part of it as well, right?
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, I guess, well, I say yes because that's how I work. There are dance movement
Really?
therapists who don't do a lot of talking. It is mostly
Oh,
movement or moving or, using movement in a therapeutic session to mirror a client's posture, gesture, using the client's posture and gesture, facial expression as a supportive
see.
intervention. So it can look different. I happen to use probably more words than many dance movement therapists. Um, but it is, yeah, there is some talking and there is some moving and there's some observing movement as well.
Right. Um, yeah, very off-topic question.
Perfect. I love the off-topic questions.
But yeah, because we are definitely going to talk about creativity. That's basically what you do and what is part of mostly
Yeah.
everything that you do. I was just wondering because we are talking about what you did in the past, and um, now you have this podcast and you have this therapy. Is performing still a big part of your life? Is that still happening as well?
It does still happen. It is not as big a part of my life as it was in the past. However, when I have the opportunity to get back on stage, I absolutely do. I love it. I love dancing and singing and acting and sharing that with people. That is a a joy. It's a undescribable joy I experience when I get to do that. So the last time I was formally on stage was almost 2.5 years ago, in a production of Mamma Mia. which was so much fun.
Oh,
And I don't know if your listeners, if you love the music of ABBA, go check it out. It's a great show to explore and um yeah, so, being able to get back on stage when I want to is always fun, and whether it's a professional show or a community theater or just getting to sing in a cabaret that a friend is putting on and they need an extra person to come and do something, it's always it's always a delight to get to flex those muscles again, that creative experience again for me, and I will always say yes to that.
right. So yeah, that question actually helped me to transition. Um, so so yeah, obviously sustaining creativity, the program and the podcast that you have. Why is it such an important thing to you? Because you said you enjoy it. So what does it give yourself? And also, why do you feel it important for other people, for everyone? It's
Yeah, great questions. I'll kind of break it down and give you a little overview of what sustaining creativity is. So, when I was in acting school, we were taught how to be great performers, great actors, musicians, singers. However, we weren't taught how to navigate the business side of the entertainment world, really, or how to navigate rejection, which there is a lot of in that
right.
performing world. So after I got my master's degree, I started putting some of these pieces together of more therapeutic skill and theatrical training to really initially support performers to sustain their craft and their creativity when you're
Mhm.
faced with 50 no's a year or a month if you've going to auditions and you're not right for this or you're not right for that or the director or the producers are looking for something completely different than what you are showing up with. So initially, it was really geared towards performers. And I think early on, I had a sense of of creativity as being a only about performing and only about the creative arts. And as I have dug deeper into creativity, I have really shifted my perspective of creativity and see it more like there are two kind of camps of creativity. There is a performative creative expression that we share with the world. And there is a more everyday creativity. That's how you get dressed in the
Mm,
morning, how you put food on a plate, how you drive to
right,
work, the path you choose to walk your dog. Um, those more everyday, some might call it mundane creative experiences, but those, so there's kind of two separate, and I don't know if they're actually separate, but they can feel separate because you're not necessarily walking your dog in performance or putting, so, or, singing for the other cars that you're driving next to as you drive to work and you're choosing to sing a song.
right,
Um, so the idea of sustaining creativity, I mean, sustaining anything is difficult, especially a creative endeavor or a creative expression. So my goal in creating this was to provide skills and tools for people in the entertainment business, whatever field they were in, to feel like they could take creative risk and then come back to a sense of safety and trust within themselves that they still could move forward with their creativity, whether they were getting a yes or a no from the bigger industry about their creative
right.
experience. Yeah. So that's kind of where sustaining creativity began, and it's evolved. And in terms of the podcast, I talk to people around the world about what their experience of creativity is. And I talk to people who don't think they're creative. I talk to people who think they're very creative. I interview people who are in accounting jobs or lawyers or, coaches or yoga instructors. And I also interview musicians and entertainers and, you know, um, pageant queens and government officials. And so it spans a large group of people and cultures and what they see as creativity and how they choose to express their own creativity in their everyday life.
Are definitely very varied people. It's like a
Yeah.
huge spectrum of differences, and all of them kind of have a definition of creativity, though.
That's such a great question. It is a question I ask all of my guests. What does it mean to you to be creative? And every
Right.
single person has a different answer. So I, I don't know that there's an agreed upon definition of what it is to be creative. I think it is a personal experience, like what you personally believe or feel, or how creativity shows up in your life. Um, there are some themes for sure that show up having interviewed over 200 people for my
Mm.
podcast. So I have some data about what it means to be creative, but there hasn't been one specific definition that has appeared.
Yeah, I kind of, because when you were talking about like these mundane creative things, I I I feel like, but I'm also someone who I would say is rather more creative um than other people might answer. So um I kind of have this feeling as well that our creativity basically shows in everything we do, because like someone can ask you like how you doing today, and even how you answer that question, in what way maybe you're a little bit more um playful with it, maybe you're not, like all
Yeah,
these things already um everything basically we do is creative, if we think about it like that.
absolutely. I 100% agree. And yeah, I think looking at your life or the world through that creative lens allows you to experience things in a very different way, experience more joy, experience more playfulness, experience more connection, bonding, childlike wonder, imagination, all of these pieces that kind of build into creative experiences. So I agree. Anything can be creative.
Another thing that I just thought of, I don't know if it's 100% connects with the thing of being creative, but obviously it's almost in the word. So being creative and to create something. Um, do do you feel like that's important to people as well? And um, because yeah, I just always kind of feel like it's kind of what we're here for. So a lot of people might long to create something, whatever again this means to them.
Yeah.
Um, so is that an important topic as well?
I think this idea of creating something or leaving a legacy, whatever that legacy is, whether it's having children, whether it's writing a book or writing a piece of music or journaling, whether it's something that is intended for other people or really intended for yourself, but it is a part of who you are that 100 years from now, someone else may find, read, and turn it into something else. So, that idea of creating something, whether it is for others or just for yourself, I think absolutely shows up in creativity. And, it's those things that we do for ourselves that I believe keep our own creative cup full. So whether it is journaling or,
Mm.
learning a new skill, whether you're choosing to learn a language or a musical instrument or taking a class at a community college or, volunteering somewhere that you are interested in or, immersing yourself in in a different culture or different country and what that creative experience is so that there isn't a I think creativity shrinks the divide between people.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I think I would agree. Um, on that note, do do you feel um it possible that you lose this creativity as well, that you kind of lose your connection to that part of yourself?
I'm nodding for the listeners who can't see me. Yes, I do agree. And there's actually like scientific research to back it up. So in the 1970s, a gentleman by the name of George Land was hired by NASA to do a longitudinal study on creativity and kind of design, maybe it was a test for potential NASA employees, astronauts to test their creativity. And so what he designed, he administered to children initially. I believe it was 1,700 5 and 6 year olds or like 3 to 5 year olds in a Head Start early childhood education program. And he was kind of testing the um, creative intelligence. And of the 5 and 6 year olds or 4 or 5 and 6 year olds he tested, 98% of them tested with like creative intelligence off the chart. And he followed these same kids for the next 5 years. So he did the
Mhm.
test again when they were 10. And, the number he got, this is a staggering difference and always blows my mind, but the number went from 98% to 32% just in the span
Whoa.
of 5 years. Yeah, that's
Oh,
in when I first learned that, I thought, "Is that true? Could that be right?" And then he did it again when these children were 15, and it decreased again. So it went from 32% to a number I'm not going to remember, but it was lower than 32% when these children were 15. And so he decided to do a much bigger sample study and tested
mm.
200,000 adults, 18 to 65, I believe. And the number of adults who tested within that creativity mark was 2%. So, in the
Wow.
span of, when you think of it, not that many years going from 98% down to 2%. And so, yeah, as we get older, our understanding, our experience of creativity changes exponentially. And that those numbers always shock me and blow my mind when I'm sharing them. So, that's some of the
Did,
science behind it.
did he, when he did this test, did he attribute that change to anything at all?
That's a really good question. I don't know if he specifically pinpointed one thing, but, in terms of development, as we get older, we start to take in more external um, information. And that could be opinions from other people, that could be societal beliefs, cultural shifts as we get older. But I don't know that there was like one specific thing that attributed those jumps um, across that time frame.
Right. Um, yeah, I mean, the like the number of 2% was shocking to me. It wasn't shocking that it decreased, but the amount that it did by definitely was shocking. And I can also think of some reasons why that might happen. I was just yeah, it would have been interesting if he actually did like some scientific research
Yeah.
on that. But
And he may have he it's possible he did, and I just don't remember it at the moment, but you can absolutely look up his study that he did with NASA and then the larger study that he did as well. Um, yeah, it is a fascinating piece of the creative world and contribution to the world of creativity as well.
So in your opinion, if we talk about adults, if we talk about people that are quote unquote rooted in society, you know, they have
Mhm,
their job, they have kind of their life built out. Um, why do you think it might be not really common to seek out creativity, to be like, you know, content, and not really having that playfulness, the curiosity, that childlike
mhm.
being anymore?
I have a lot of thoughts on this. I think that some of it is uh, the the stereotypes about what it means to be an adult and what it means to not be an adult, and how
Mm,
much we buy into those stereotypes. And I think another piece is how many questions we ask in life. You know, they also did a study about like curiosity, and children
right.
who are like 5-year-olds, they did the study, they ask 140 questions a day. Random questions, not necessarily like the most important questions or whatever, that but they ask this huge amount of questions. Adults ask
Mm,
4 questions a day. The average
right.
adult, I would say. Yes, there are some careers where you're asking many more questions, but the average adult is only asking around 4 questions a day. So, there's this lack of curiosity that is built into adulthood. There's this sense of, oh, once you become an adult, there's a lot of stuff you should know. Whether that's true or not is almost irrelevant, but the fact that for whatever reason, adults feel like they can't ask a question about something that they assume they should already know because they are in whatever classifies an adult. And that's even changing what people see as adulthood or believe to be adults in our society, our kind of Western culture these days, that has is very different than 50 years ago than it is today. The number of people who would call themselves adult at 18 or 21 is very different in today's modern society and culture. So that kind of answers some of the questions. Why, what happens in adulthood to shift our creative expression, our creative experience. And I think, another one is how we hold on to history. About if someone in our life told us, you can't draw, or you are terrible at math, or you shouldn't insert whatever there, we believe them rather than questioning it and saying, really? Do I? Is that true? Well, I'm going to go figure that out for myself and not take this other person belief or assumption about who I am as gospel or as the truth. So I think there's some piece of history and holding on to it, and how our brain freezes almost in that moment, to because oftentimes when I ask people, Was there a moment in your life where you noted having a lot of creativity to not experiencing creativity? And you're like, oh, yeah, my piano teacher told me I was a terrible student, or I was terrible at piano, or my art teacher in high school told me that my paintings were terrible. And so I didn't pursue the art degree in college that I really wanted to because of that. Um, so I think there's a lot of factors that go into it. There isn't just one. Those are my beliefs, whether they're true or not.
Um, I think that's a great point as well, though, because for some reason there's always this um like you have this myth. You know, everyone would agree, I think, that you're not. I mean, probably not everyone. Now that I think about it, but you're not perfect at math. You go into
Ex-
school, you learn the basics, you learn algebra, you learn calculus, and obviously, you also have to keep up with it. You have to
Mhm.
do the tests. You have to study, and you get better. And for some reason, with the arts, people just, or some people, not everyone as well, not to generalize, but most people, I think, would say you're either talented or you're not. Which talent can be a thing, but
Mhm.
it is a skill as well. And you, having, started performing relatively early, maybe you can attest to that, that it's just with a lot of repetition, you become better. And it is a skill that one can learn, right?
Absolutely. Creativity is a skill. Anyone can learn it. And and like just like math or science or just like driving, any you can learn to drive. Even if you have challenges or issues, there are adjustments that can be made to creativity and how it gets to show up in your unique individual experience in your unique life. And yeah, the idea of starting something at an early age, you know, nothing happens overnight. You put in a lot of effort and energy to learn a craft and learn a skill, just like an athlete. An athlete isn't they may have some talent for a specific sport, but they still put in hundreds of hours of training to
Yeah.
go to the Olympics or to be a professional in that sport or athletic experience. So, yeah, there's I think different pieces when it comes to creativity because some people do pursue creativity as a career and some people just employ it in their everyday life, not as a career. They're doing other things, but it is a part of their their living experience.
So maybe to bring it to the therapeutic part a little bit as well, that we talked a little bit about in the beginning. Um, so I mean, this can be a lot of things. I just drawing came to my mind because it's something that I, from my own experience, always thought, and still, I'm very honest with myself. I might not have the patience to to ever
Mhm.
be drawing like very well because I always, yeah, I just see myself not having the patience and
Mhm.
really sitting down and drawing to that where I'm happy with the outcome. Um, but I guess you can do it with a lot of different creative things that, as you've said, can all be therapeutic when we're talking about the creative arts
Mhm.
uh, therapies. So, um, well, how can people kind of figure out if these things help them, especially if they maybe were discouraged to do them by someone before? So how can people kind of do them for themselves as well and just kind of get started in this therapeutic work? themselves?
Great question. And I think, yeah, there can be a lot of hesitation to try something new, especially if there was a history of someone telling you, "Oh, you're not good at art." And to use art or to use movement or dance or writing in a therapeutic experience is not about perfection. It's about the process. And so there's kind of a parallel experience, the therapeutic process and the creative process. And everyone has a different creative process. Some people, they get up every day, sit at the same desk at the same time and write whatever they are writing. Other people will say, I have to move my body. So I'm going to put on my favorite song and I'm going to move however the music calls in this moment. And today it's going to be big movements and tomorrow it's going to be really tiny movements. But that's their version of getting into that creative flow or creative process. And that in and of itself can be therapeutic to, if you're struggling or you're going through something that is causing you distress, what is it like to put that distress on paper? Whether it's write about it, draw about it, or if putting something on paper and having something to look at you absolutely don't want to do, what is it like to turn on a piece of music or just allow impulse to move your physical body? And I would say making sure that you have a space that you feel is safe and contained and you're not
Mm.
hitting something or someone if you're moving and making sure that your environment supports the creative expression that you are engaging in is really important. But, oftentimes going and just taking a yoga class or a Pilates class or a dance class has a therapeutic component to it. It's about connecting to your nervous system, connecting to your physical body, the edges of your body when you follow a dance combination or when you're invited to move across the floor or to do a series of poses in yoga or Pilates that you are moving your body in a way that is new or not typical. If you sit at a desk all day and then you stand up and stretch, what do you notice? What are those
Mm.
sensations you're aware of? Or if you've been driving for a long distance and you get out of the car, what part of your body do you notice? That's a little small way to start checking in with your physical self, your physical body. And okay, how does that body want to move? Do I need to take, do I need to do 10 jumping jacks? Do I need to stretch? Do I need to roll my wrists and neck and shoulders and shake shake everything off and then get back in the car and drive again? So there's all these little things. It's not about, oh, I have to create this masterpiece. This I how do I get to be present in this moment and do just what this moment is needing? It's not about the right colors. My favorite thing to do is get a blank piece of paper, a black pen, and scribble all over it. And then take a step back and look at it and think, okay, what colors want to be added to this? Sometimes there are colors,
Mm.
sometimes there aren't. But this experience of I'm expressing myself on this external piece in this moment has a therapeutic component to it.
Um, I found one thing super interesting in what you just said because we kind of touched on it when we were talking about the dance movement therapy.
Mhm.
And now, when you mentioned basically listening to your body, being aware of what it needs, um, because we talked about losing the connection to creativity, but also a big problem. I feel like we have today is losing the connection with our body, you know? So actually being able to realize and even listen in, because
Mhm.
how many people do actually drive the car and go, oh, maybe I should pull over and stretch. So, um, is how would you say how is and I feel like that's also for a lot of people a very hard one to
Mm,
cultivate, to really
mhm.
be able to listen in and understand our body in a way. How can you cultivate that?
Practice. Practice and
Mm,
time. It is also a skill, 'cause I believe that many people struggle to want to pay attention to their body. It is it's not part of our Western culture to ask. It's a part. What do you they say, "What do you think about this?" Not, "How do you feel about this?" Those are 2 very different
right.
questions. So if you're constantly orienting to, "Well, what do I think?" or "How do I think about this?" What else could be? As simple as shifting that question to, "How do I feel about this?" What emotion comes up when I look at that? Like, if you go to an art museum and you stand in front of a piece of art, how does that art make you feel? Do you hate it? Do you love it? Are you confused by it? Is it something that elicits disgust from you, or pleasure, or joy, or love? What are those emotions that are being called forth? And emotions are not something we talk about in Western culture often. It is very taboo topic.
Yeah.
And so it is one most people avoid. How are you feeling? Or if someone asks you, "How are you?" The canned response of, "I'm fine. Great." What would it be to say, "I am feeling tired," or "I am struggling," this isn't to elicit something from someone else. This is literally just honestly answering the question I think, but you'd still have to, like, tap into yourself to know, what is the thing? How do I want to answer this question? There are times where I don't want to answer the question honestly, and I'm like, it's fine, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that's really normal. And so if 1 out of every 10 times someone asks you, "How are you?" you answer differently, that's a way to start. That's a place to begin to connect to your physical body and to connect to your own creative self in the same way.
That's a great point. And basically being true to yourself and in that way kind of cultivating that connection, because it is one thing to realize what we're feeling, because um that's also sometimes you or even myself personally, it's like I feel uneasy, but it's why do I actually feel uneasy? Am I angry about something? Am I worried about something? What, like, to really narrow down the
Mhm.
exact feeling that it is that is um basically coming up. Um but then yeah, just also acknowledging it, definitely, or rather, if you wouldn't acknowledge it, I can definitely see how that is very unproductive to the connection of your mind and your body. If you kind of know, but you go on all day saying, "Oh no," and maybe even saying it to yourself, "No, everything's fine," when it actually isn't. So yeah, I feel like that's a great um, step to just be aware of, and trying to
Yeah, it's an
cultivate.
invitation an invitation to be curious about yourself. Ask yourself questions. What am I feeling? How do I feel about that? What where is that living in my body? Those are those are questions we don't ask ourselves. We don't ask ourselves a lot of questions. So ask yourself more questions. Get curious. That's where the creativity piece comes in. Curiosity is such a cornerstone of creativity. So ask yourself more questions.
Um, doesn't have anything to do with feelings, but that just came in my mind when you talked about asking more questions
Hmm.
because um kind of feel like that's it's also a little bit um of a weird connection nowadays with asking questions because um a lot of the things we have, if not all of the things that we have these days, you know, these technologies, just innovation in itself is
Hmm.
basically people asking questions and people questioning the things that we have been doing and trying to change them. And I feel
Yeah.
like the majority of people would agree that's how it came along and would agree that innovation is a great thing. But yet,
Hmm.
if you go out today and start questioning things, people might not like that too much. So um, it's kind of it's a weird one, isn't it? Where people kind of what everything great that humanity has ever done comes from asking a question and finding a creative, questioning approach to a problem that we faced. But then it just, or maybe I'm just feeling that, but to me, it feels like we're kind of discouraging questioning and asking questions.
I think we're discouraging asking ourselves questions and asking other people questions. We ask technology questions 24/7. Like
Mm,
with AI, you can have full conversations asking all sorts of questions, but you wouldn't get the same information. You couldn't ask AI, "How do I feel today?" They
right.
wouldn't know. They wouldn't know how you could only ask yourself that question. So I think some of it is like, what what are the questions you're actually asking? And how many of them are kind of turned back on yourself? Yes, it's great that we have technology to say, like, when was such and such created? And then we get the answer. However, how do I feel about such and such is not a question I can ask anyone else. I can only ask myself that question. And so I do believe that we're losing that piece with the technology because we're only asking the technology a question. We're not then coming back to ourselves and saying, well, how do I feel about that? Or what do I think about that? Or what's my relationship to that?
Yeah. Um, I mean, is that's think a big discussion in general because especially with AI now you
Mhm.
know, a lot of people kind of, well, some people they fear, oh, it will take away my, let's say, graphic designer job. But then other people also say, no, I'm not worried at all because AI can never like be creative like a human is. So I feel like, especially now with us having AI and it being able to reconstruct things. I can type in, please draw me a picture of a dog in the style of, you know, Van Gogh. And it does that. Um, so I feel like now with AI, even more so than ever, it comes to question of what actually is creativity. What is human creativity?
Yeah. I, I think we're all asking that question right now, artists and non-artists alike, and feeling that industries are being obliterated by AI, and other people in that same industry say, no, it will never impact us because AI is not in my brain or doesn't have my ideas or my thoughts or my interpretation of something else or my insights or creative or my life history. They don't have my life
Right.
experiences that I have. So, yeah, you can plug in a prompt to AI and it will regurgitate based on the knowledge that it has, and it will never look exactly like what you are creating. But and then there's people who feel like, how do they protect their own craft and their own creative
Right.
experience and expression? And I think there's a lot of unknowns about it still, and I think that inspires a lot of fear and a lot of worry that people are going to lose out on something. And yeah, I mean, what is it, what does it mean to be creative? I mean, if putting food on a plate can be creative, AI can't actually do that. It, at least not yet. I don't know any, you know, Michelin star robotic chefs yet.
Hopefully, there will never be.
I agree. I agree. And and yeah, there are some industries that are impacted much more by the AI world than others.
But yeah, I'm also kind of on the side of people saying it it can regenerate things. It can never like create and generate something novel. Um, and maybe it does prove us wrong in some years, but yeah, from my side, I really also hope that it doesn't, and
Mhm.
that we kind of that this will be the distinguishing factor between what a human produces and what a formula can produce.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree. I think I, yeah, we're still at such an early stage of it that we don't know what will happen. And it will never have the same heartbeat that I have. It will never have the same history of experience. It will never do trapeze when it was 3. That is not a part of its experience.
Right.
So I get to take my own history and experience and use that to create whatever comes from that, whether it's creating art or something to perform, or if it's sitting across from someone in a therapy session and using it as a way of connection.
Right. And um, well, let me think about how can I ask that as a question without basically giving my own opinion as the answer. Um, yeah, that's hard. Um, because like you said, everyone has their own unique experiences. Everyone, like no one, and that's a beautiful thing. Hey, that we're all different.
Yeah.
So, um, how important is it now with that knowledge and knowing that every human has their own experience for us. And I mean, we touched on it, but I don't think we asked it in that specific way. For really for everyone to be creative and for everyone to put out something, because yeah, like we said, you can create something that only you can create.
Mhm.
I can create something only I can create, and um, anyone here in our hostel, any of our housekeepers, they can only create something that they can create because we all have unique experiences. So, um, do you feel that important of for just humanity that everyone puts out their spark kind of into the world.
Absolutely. I mean, yes, I think we all have our unique creative spark, and what that looks like for me is different than it looks like for you, and is different than what it looks like for someone going through a crisis, or, you know,
Mm.
what my experience of creativity when I'm not in crisis looks very different than when I am experiencing a crisis or a natural disaster or a war or some cataclysmic event. Creativity is utilized in very different ways depending on the boundaries, the structure, and the parameters I am currently in. So, even within ourselves, creative experience and creative expression will look different depending on what's
Mm.
happening in our life.
Yeah, that that's also something. Um, I mean, that's true for all arts, but especially something I always do as a hobby that has been with me for most of my life is writing.
Mm,
And sometimes I feel a little bit of a sadness thinking, oh, when you were like 17, why didn't you pursue this thing more and, pretend it into a project? Because I will never be able to create the same short
mm.
story or novel with at 30 that I would have created with 17. So,
Mhm,
um, and that's kind of the beautiful thing. You mentioned journaling as well. I feel like that's the cool thing about journaling because we can basically really capture ourselves, the
mhm,
how we were at a specific time, and just really go back into these experiences and then also look at them and analyzing them later on. So
mhm.
I think, yeah, especially for journaling and writing down thoughts and inner discussions, um, it's such a good tool to portray what am I at this moment, like how is all these things happening right now, and then looking back, it's just yeah.
Absolutely, and for listeners who really struggle to start a journal or think, "Oh, I could never write that," or "What would I even say?" Or thinking, "Oh, it has to be I can only write this amazing, important thing." You know, if you think of your journal as another person, what's the conversation you wanna have with them? And essentially, you're having that conversation with yourself, and you're just writing it down. So what are your thoughts about the restaurant you're sitting in, or the cafe you're sitting in, or the hostel you're staying in, or about the people that cross your path, or something you watched on television, or a movie you saw, or the last sunset you experienced, or the last sunrise? What would you ask the sun? What would you ask the moon? What would you ask the ocean? What would you ask? And that can be a great way to just start writing. It doesn't have to be this very important thing. It can just be a conversation with your pen and yourself. So I believe journaling can be very powerful and very important. And some of it is just getting out of our own way to say, this is the important, this is just putting words on a page is important right now. Whatever those words are, doesn't matter.
Yeah. I I loved what you just said about what would I say to the sun? What would I say to the moon? Because I feel like that's where journaling or just writing in general again helps you to cultivate this more curious mindset overall, and then maybe yeah, you're just going through your day to day and you think about things like in a more curious way, and you just start to um shift your perspectives and kind of get out of the everyday. well, that's just how it works because that's how it works. No, but you start like asking, oh, but why actually? And you know,
Yeah.
that that's a great point because I don't know if a lot of people today thought, oh, what would I say to this stuff? No,
Right?
so I just found that a great first thing to start off that mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. I also I something that you were saying about the your 17-year-old self versus your 30-year-old self and how different they are and the journaling piece. I just want to let listeners know and remind them like it's never too late to be creative or experience creativity in your life. We have a lot of as we get older, I think oftentimes people experience a lot of regret, and the things that they regret tend to be the more creative experiences. The travel, the learning another language,
Right.
the musical instrument that they started playing as a child and stopped playing, and they wish they still would. So I believe that creativity is the balm for a regret. So if you want to experience something, doesn't matter how young or old you are, there's still opportunity. It's never too late.
I feel like that's a great ending point actually as well. I love to talk about the topic, and there is questions that I could ask more, but that's just such a nice message. I think it's a good way for us to wrap it up. So um, yeah, Mari, here at the end, I always want to know as well. If that resonated with the people, if they found the conversation as interesting as I found it, where can we find more about you? Where can we get in touch with you? What are the things that you have available online? And I'll obviously put all the links in the description as well, so everyone can find it easily. But yeah, where can we find?
Perfect. Well, I am very active on Instagram. Maybe not right now, getting off the holidays, but I'm getting back into
Mm,
it. So, Instagram, Facebook, my podcast, Sustaining Creativity Podcast, you can find wherever you listen to podcasts. I love having people ask me questions. Um, and I'm in the process of revamping my website. So it's not available, but it is sustainingcreativity.com when it returns. And yeah, that's where you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn is my full name, Mari Reisberg. Connect with me on there. I'd love to talk about creativity and answer any creativity questions you might have. Shoot me a message and I will absolutely get back to you.
nice. Um, so yeah, Mari, thank you so much today for your time. Thank you for sharing your journey with us, your experiences, and yeah, I really enjoyed talking about creativity, and hopefully um, there was things where people got inspired from as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation and I will always talk about creativity. So thank you for inviting me to do so today.
Cool. Yeah, enjoy the rest of your day then, and bye, everyone.